Welcome to a podcast by Kayleigh, the gateway to unlocking your unlimited potential. I'm creating an army of 6- and 7-figure makeup artists, and I want you to join me. In this podcast, I'm going to be crushing gatekeeping, opening the doors to the knowledge you need, and deep diving into the topics that can push us to the next level. Be prepared for epic guests and answers to the questions you have always wanted to know. No more small business, no more just a makeup artist. The beauty industry is a $250 billion industry, and you're in it. Let's get ready to open those gates. This is a podcast by Kayleigh. Hello, and welcome back to our second episode of a podcast by Kayleigh. First of all, a big thank you for just being here today. I was actually so buzzing to record this second episode that I'm doing it the day after. So my boyfriend's gone to the gym this time. If you listen to the first episode, he was out at a work thing, and that's where I took my shot to record a podcast episode, because boys are loud, aren't they? Like, even flicking off a light switch, the mic picks it up. So I thought I would do it when he has gone to the gym. So welcome back, everybody. Thank you, first of all, for the wonderful reception to my tiny 9-minute episode. I honestly did not expect that. I mean, I'm acting like I'm receiving an Oscar, but it is my version of the Oscars. And it really made me happy because I put it out on International Women's Day, which I just felt was really fitting for a podcast like this. Now, today I wanted to dive into the absolute rite of passage, I feel like, for any new podcaster, and talk about my history. And this doesn't feel very comfortable because normally I try and shift any conversation away from me and talking about myself. If you're one of my friends and you meet up with me, you'll probably ask me like what I've been up to, and I will always say like, plodding on, same old. I really just have never felt particularly the most comfortable talking about myself, but here we are. I've got an entire podcast now, and I do feel like I have a history and a story that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. So I thought it would be fitting. It will help you kind of get to know me and brand and what I do. So let's get down to it. So little baby Kayleigh, she was quite a tomboy. She was very tomboy. I was climbing trees and going outside a lot, but it wasn't until, if you're in the UK, do you remember Sabrina the Teenage Witch? Do you remember there was a Sabrina the Teenage Witch magazine? So my mum basically bought me this Sabrina the Teenage Witch magazine. I loved that TV show. And over here in the UK, like, magazines in my childhood were a huge deal. Like, who got the Where's Wally magazine? Does anybody remember that? Where you would get it would be like every issue of it was like a different country. And I remember the first issue being Egypt. And that is just imprinted now into my 33-year-old brain. So yes, so she bought me a Sabrina the Teenage Witch magazine. And the very first issue of that came with a purple makeup box. It was sparkly. It was like this gelatinous kind of material. And then every single issue after that would be a piece of makeup to go in your makeup box. And that, my friends, was how I became a makeup artist. Literally, I have it down to Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Bearing in mind, I don't remember very much about that TV show being about makeup. But anyway, so I distinctly remember being really interested in it from that point on. And I remember one of my friends coming around to my house, and I did her makeup with all this stuff that was in that makeup box. And I remember my mum turning around and saying something like it wasn't that bad. And me, just a tiny spark, thinking that's what I'll do when I grow up then. But lo and behold, we did not go down that route for quite a while. As I said in episode 1, I was a very academic kind of kid. I mean, I wouldn't say I was crazy academic, but I loved to read, and I was terrible at maths, but I was always really good at English. I was always quite a good writer. I just loved science, and I always did typically quite well when I was interested in school, which is a story for another day. And you guys know from the previous episode, when it came to choosing at the wonderful ripe age of 16 what you want to do for the rest of your life, I did not go with my passion, which at the time was art. I mean, I didn't talk about that very much, I don't think, at the time, because in school it is very much those kind of dreams are dampened, you won't make money being an artist and this and that. So I ended up going to law school. Let me tell you, law school was not for me. University was not for me in general, but obviously the kind of school that I was in, it was that or you wouldn't be anything. You wouldn't make anything of yourself. So I ended up going to law school, and I distinctly remember watching, is it 13 Angry Men or 12 Angry Men? It was some film, I should probably know that as somebody who studied law. It was a film that was very like, if you've watched it, it's about a jury and one juror makes all the difference. And that was what got me into thinking, okay, this could be a really noble career, because I've always just been drawn to helping people, which I guess is kind of why I do what I do now. And anyway, went to law school. Now, in my very first year of law school, that was when YouTube started taking off, and this is where I really reveal my age. It was Tanya Burr, ex-Sparkage, Zoella, like the Pixie Woo sisters. It was all of the OGs, like Bubs Beauty. I was obsessed with her. Even like Elle Fowler, and what was her sister's name? Elle, was it Nikki? Anyway, and what they would do in the very, very early days of YouTube is they would do these really like unscripted, completely raw MAC hauls. And I was like, what on earth is MAC? Like at the time, the most high-end piece of makeup I had was a Benefit mascara. And I loved that Benefit mascara. I remember distinctly going into House of Fraser with my mum to get it and thinking it was the most expensive thing I'll ever purchase. And I just got addicted to these MAC hauls. And obviously like the beauty community, that was where it all started. That's where it all like took off. So little old me, that was probably the spark that got me back into my creative side, got me back in touch with being an artist again. And I remember going and spending absolutely all of my student loan at MAC from that point on. And it was pretty nice because I still had that knack for makeup. So I would do all my friends' makeup for £5. Can you believe it? I am ashamed of myself. And go out and spend all that money on alcohol. And I was pretty good at it. I still had quite a nice knack for it. My makeup, my own makeup was, I think, always okay. Like obviously not a professional standard, but I just had that natural knack for it. And I remember the very first MAC collection that I was addicted to was MAC Venomous Villains, which was when MAC teamed up with Disney to create a collection based on these villains. And I spent all my money on that. I think I bought almost everything from my local MAC counter. And on that note, I do remember looking at the MAC girls and being in absolute awe of them, like just looking at them and being like, I could never work there. I could never do that. Like they're so glamorous, they're so beautiful, they're so good at makeup. And I just put it to the back of my head because obviously, as I said in episode 1, there was a lot of beliefs that I just picked up from my teachers at the time, not my parents, definitely my teachers, about artists not making any money and health and social care and beauty not being a route for intellectual people. And obviously those beliefs are just criminal. Like, I really hope one day I can teach my own children that they can be anything they want to be and they can make money doing almost anything that they want to. But yeah, I carried on doing the law degree, and it came to, I worked in a law firm. I don't know how I got this job in a law firm, because let me tell you guys, I was not good at law. When you go from being like one of the kind of best grades at high school and you go into a very academic degree, you then are not the best at it. So I went from the top to kind of the bottom, and obviously spending all my time on YouTube and doing makeup, it just wasn't working out for me. And I barely scraped a pass, to be honest. I didn't go to my graduation. That is how little I enjoyed my degree. And I just distinctly remember working in this law firm. Again, no idea how I got that job because I was so crap. And being on the phone to my mum and just being so down and saying like, I hate this, I can't do this. And it was my mum's advice saying, what do you want to do then? And I said, I really like makeup. And I felt so stupid, so embarrassed to say that. And my mum just saying, well, do that then. And it just was the simplest advice that she probably has no idea how impactful that advice was to me, because I just thought, you know what? Yeah, like who cares what some old like teacher who is literally pushing their views and their values and just pushing it onto me. Who cares what they think? And it did take a couple more years from that conversation for me to really figure it all out. But I basically still had those views. I went and tried to do a medical degree, and obviously my heart was not in that either. That literally lasted a few months. My poor parents and friends at that time, with me flip-flopping around as a 21-year-old trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's the thing. If there are any like early 20s people listening to this, You're not supposed to have it all figured out at 21. Like, if you could have seen me at 21, just battling the inner torment between like, do I do this? Do I do that? And not really fitting in anywhere. Like, I didn't fit in at uni. I didn't fit in at med school, and I certainly didn't fit in as a lawyer, and just really feeling quite lost. And I know a lot of you guys can probably relate to that, because I was really repressing my calling and what I was supposed to do, which I do believe was makeup, but I just didn't have that self-belief or that self-worth in the industry or myself at that time. So at the time I was working at Tesco, which is a supermarket here in the UK, and I transferred to nights. Because it was more money. It was actually a very good wage. I did graduate, and I just kind of worked in retail for a little bit, just trying to figure it all out, getting the experiences, having fun, spending every single bit of money that I made, and still doing makeup. But this had kind of evolved at this point. I wasn't brave enough to go on YouTube, but I thought I'm pretty good at writing. So I made a blog, and oh my God, I deleted that blog. But if you could see it, it is the most cringe thing I have ever done. And I know if anybody's listening to this from my blogging days or knew me when I was blogging, it bless my heart, bless my little soul. I might even put on Instagram some of the looks, because this blog was dedicated to the looks that I created on myself. Bless my little heart. And I have so much gratitude. And I look back, and even though it's super cringe, that little old 22-year-old was expressing herself and becoming an artist. That is my humblest beginnings, was that little blog. And I still have every single look. I can still post them. I might even do that, because there's one where this liner is just the most terrible liner I've ever done. But now I'm very, very, very good. That's actually my strongest thing in makeup, is winged liner. So I had a little blog, and I was just doing that. It was really, really fun. I adored it at the time. And I would post about my holidays, which at the time was solely to Disney. Yes, I was a Disney girly, which is still super cringe. And I would post whatever makeup I was wearing, whatever makeup I had bought. And I also posted all my holidays, and like I called them trip reports. Oh, bless my little heart. You know, like it just was what I was into at the time. And I still have a lot of love and nostalgia for Disney. But obviously, as you grow up, you do want to see a bit more of the world. But my humble beginnings were going to Disney and blogging about it, hoping that Walt Disney World would ship me off one day on a free trip, even though I never showed my face. Anyway, and the blog really started to take off. I had, I can't remember how many kind of followers. That wasn't really a thing at the time, but I actually got nominated for a Cosmo blog award. Do you remember Cosmo magazine, guys? And I can't remember if I won it or not, because honestly, it was such a hidden part of me. I was still so ashamed and embarrassed to be into makeup. So nobody in my real life knew I had this blog. No, I think one or two of my real life friends knew. Nobody at work knew. Maybe my parents knew, but that was it. And because I just still, to that day, still had the inner belief that, as I said, these are not my words from episode 1, but a teacher once told me that only thick people become hairdressers and makeup artists. And that's what I kept with me. And that's why I didn't tell anyone about it. But we move, we grow, and I got nominated for a Cosmo Blog Award, and it was wonderful. And it was from that opportunity, being nominated for a Cosmo Blog Award, that a PR got in touch with me and said, and at this moment, I was pretty good at makeup. Like, I was not a professional, but I definitely was edging that line between like self-taught individual / professional. And I had started to collect a kit. And this was just from being basically a serial buyer at the time. The only things that I didn't have were things like foundations and concealers, but I had pretty much every blusher, every eyeshadow, every liquid liner, every lipstick. I had pretty much everything apart from the skin things. And I remember her name was Penny, and she invited me to come to the Cosmo head office and do an online tutorial on her. So this was the first time that I actually did makeup on somebody else. Now, I'm sure that video is out there and I would love to see it, because, oh my God, I think I looked bloody terrified in it. And what was I doing? Little old me, a little blogger from Kent. What was I doing on such a platform? I had the audacity, but anyway. And she actually invited me back. We did a couple of videos together, and that was the tiny spark that I had in me, where I got a glimpse into the industry and I got a glimpse into my calling. And I thought, you know what? that I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And my most natural first step was I couldn't afford another course. I was still paying back my wonderful student loan. So my first natural step was to work in retail makeup. Now, if you've ever applied for retail makeup, it is not that easy, is it, guys? It took me years, I would say. I think 2 solid years of applying to counters with no experience, only a Cosmo blog award under my belt and a blog that I was too scared to show anyone. For anybody to take a chance on me. And obviously I looked at Mac and I thought, I'm not even going to bother applying to them because I can't even get a job at Benefit. Now, funny interjection about Benefit. I actually did get through to the very last interview stage of Benefit. Now, if anybody is listening who has done an Benefit interview, please slide into my DMs, because that was the most terrifying and character building experience of my entire life. So if anybody doesn't know what a Benefit interview is like, let me enlighten you. So I get to the local Benefit counter and there's like 10 of us. And I thought, bloody hell, this is quite a lot, isn't it? And we all had to just show up to the counter. We weren't in a room or anything. And it was an audition. The manager told us we needed to go onto the shop floor and pull customers in. And slowly throughout the audition, they will kind of whittle us down to the final few, I guess. And I had never done anything like this before. I mean, I'm so introverted, guys. This was just the most mental thing I had ever experienced. And there was 10 of us. And please let me tell you, I live at the time, I lived not in London, in a tiny seaside town. There was barely anybody in Debenhams on a Saturday, let alone this random Tuesday afternoon that I had the interview. So you can imagine the clientele that frequented Debenhams as well were not interested. They were just trying to buy a bra or a Zimmer frame. You know, they weren't there to put Benetint on. So, you know, I was terrified, but I thought I really bloody want this. I know this is what I'm supposed to do at this point. So you bet I got bums on seats. I went upstairs, I went to the shoe section, and I basically just begged. I was like, I'm on an interview right now. Please, will you just sit in the seat and let me do some makeup on you? I'm not crap, I promise. I remember one woman buying 4 things from me, and I would see the area manager or whoever she was go around and tap girls on the shoulder and be like, I think we've seen enough. And I would be just shaking in my little boots like, please don't let that be me. Lo and behold, I passed that section. I got through to the actual interview. And I think there might have even been another stage, but I didn't actually get the job because the counter that they were opening was quite far away from where I was based. And I would have relied solely on public transport to get there. So I don't think I got through, or I rejected it. I don't really remember. And my big break came in the form of a lovely lady called Andrea who worked at Armani. So Armani were opening a counter very far away from me, to be honest. I didn't drive. I still don't drive, by the way. We're going to learn one day. But it was about 50 minutes on a coach. There was no bus. There was no train. I had to get a coach to this counter. But you bet I was sick to death of Tesco, where I've worked since I was 16 years old. And I wanted this job. And I remember sitting on a Skype with Andrea. And she was this beautiful, like, moon woman. She had this big, long, flowing hair. And she was so, like, calming and so gentle. And one of the first questions she asked me was, what's your star sign? And I was like, oh, I'm a Capricorn moon, Scorpio rising. And I had the job from that moment there. Girlie did not care that I had not worked on a counter before. She didn't care that I had no sales experience. I had the job because she loved my star sign and my aura, apparently. I did have to go and do an audition with kind of one of the senior artists, and I got through. And yeah, that was my first job in makeup. I handed in my notice to Tesco. I was buzzing, but it wasn't for me, to be honest. I did stay there for 6 months. But one of the things about Armani, and one major respect that I have to anybody who works on a high-end counter, is I had to wear a suit every day. I had to wear heels every day. And I had no creative expression when it come to my makeup, you know. Some days, even my winged liner was too big. I remember I would show up, I mean, bless my heart, I shouldn't have done this, but I would show up with glitter liner on or glitter something. And my manager at the time would, you know, softly tell me to go and take it off in the toilets. So off I would go to the toilets to take it off, and the Mac girls would be in there and they would be like, oh my God, you can't take that off. No, like, come and work for us. So that was how I got to work at MAC was because the girls would see that I was turning up with really fun makeup and they pulled me over to their counter. To this day, I'm so forever grateful because Armani was my break into the makeup industry. I don't know if my path would be the same without Armani. It just wasn't for me. But to this day, I still swear by Luminous Silk. If I open up my drawer of foundations, that is the only foundation I have in that drawer. If somebody wants a matte finish, they're getting Armani Luminous Silk on them. Like, that's all I use. I will obviously mattify it down. But yeah, obsessed with that foundation. Obviously, going from Armani to MAC. MAC foundations are not my faves, but that's just my personal opinion. It was quite a shock to the system that none went on like Armani. But anyway, I worked at MAC and I worked there for quite a long time. I did love my MAC days. I truly, truly credit MAC for bringing me out of my shell because I was such a scared, terrified little girl. I wouldn't even answer the phone. And here I am on a podcast and making reels. And I do credit MAC, and in particular my manager at MAC. Her name was Lacey, and she just pushed me out of my comfort zone in such a caring, nice way. So I worked at MAC and it gave me what at the time, I mean, I'm talking this is like 2013 at this point, 2014. And at that time, MAC was the pinnacle. You know, there was no Charlotte Tilbury. There was no Huda Beauty or Rare Beauty or Fenty Beauty. MAC was, you know, the pinnacle. We were in control of the music on the floor. We were the busiest counter. Yes, so I worked there and I was having a great time, but I have always, from a little girl, wanted to come to London. I applied for every uni in London, didn't get into a single one. I was always drawn to it. I was a small town girl. I lived by the seaside. I lived in the countryside. It was beautiful, but there was this innate need in me to come to London. And I was, I think, a year in at the MAC counter, and I got the opportunity to transfer to MAC Harrods in London. And I moved there at the time I was with my ex. We will get into that. We will get into that story in a bit. But yeah, me and him decided to move to London together, and I worked at MAC Harrods. Now, I'm sure everybody listening knows that Harrods is one of the, if not the number one tourist destination in London. It has so much history, just with its ties to the royal family and Diana and its owners. And I really, truly, hand on heart, loved working at MAC Harrods, even though I was miserable at the time. I look back and I really, truly believe that counter and the people there just made me who I am today. And I have to say, out of every single counter, there is so many preconceived notions that they're all really bitchy. And, you know, like you're all working in a big team of girls. And the MAC counter in Harrods had 30 girls on it. And I have to say, it was one of the least bitchy places I ever worked. It was such camaraderie, teamwork. Like we were in the trenches together. I think you had to have each other's backs. I mean, obviously there was some arguments. It just happens when you're a family. But for the most part, I would say that was one of the nicest teams that I ever worked with, but one of the hardest clienteles. I am talking princes, princesses, celebrities, you name it, you are serving them. And sometimes they can be really difficult. Like you are clicked at to get attention. Like it's ruthless. And obviously MAC was still like the pinnacle of makeup. So we were the biggest brand in there. It was just constant customers. And it gets to you. I was 5 days a week. I was exhausted. And I was at this point a few years into the makeup game and kind of craving a bit more. I had done like my first freelance customers. I had done my first weddings. I had done my first photo shoots at this point. And the thing that really, for me, I could never shake was the fact that I was earning sometimes on the MAC counter over £1,000 a day. Now, if you think on a day shift, there would be maybe like 10 to 15 artists working. And most of us were earning kind of hundreds for the brand. And I can safely say I wouldn't earn that a month. And it really made me think, gosh, like I just want to earn my own money. And I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, even when I was 6 years old, I was making perfume from flowers in my garden and selling it at school and then going in detention for it. So there was always that half of me that I couldn't ever shake either. So I dropped down to 4 days a week, but unfortunately MAC could not accommodate any more than that. So I had to leave. Now, this is where the story gets spicy. I don't want to let's get deep. It's episode number 2. Why don't we? So my ex-partner at the time, quite a funny one. Obviously, at the time, I thought it was the be all and end all relationship. And we're not on here to blast anyone. We certainly will blast him a little bit though, because he does deserve it. But anyway, he got a promotion where he was working and he got a very, very considerable pay rise. I'm talking very considerable, even for London. And he said to me, maybe you should drop down. I can support us both, or maybe you can get like another little part-time job, but I think you should really focus on the makeup thing. And I was like, yeah, like that makes total sense. If the positions were reversed, I would 100% have done the same thing. Like I would have supported the family. I would have supported us both for him to pursue his dream. So I was very lucky at the time because I had a friend, as I left Mac, she came to me and she said, do you want a job at Urban Decay? I've got a great job for you. You don't have to work weekends. She gave me like a really nice deal. And she also kind of let me choose my own hours at Urban Decay because the counter was very, very small. So it allowed me to work 2 days a week at Urban Decay, and a lot of my weekends were kind of free. So I kind of hopped on over to there. So it wasn't like I was going from 4 days solid full-time income to kind of not much income. I went to like the bare minimum I needed to survive. And I spent the rest of my time kind of freelancing and really, really building up my business. And my ex, he supported us. And that is one of the big reasons why I do what I do, because inevitably we did split up and we just weren't right for each other. He did cheat on me. And you know what? I look back and I think, God, I would do that 1 billion times over to be where I am now, because that was the catalyst for change. And I truly believe it was the universe looking at me and thinking, this person needs to fly and I need to do something to make her fly. So I don't look back. I mean, I look back with a little bit of resentment because obviously that's a really crappy thing to do. But ultimately that happened to get me here with my soulmate in a life that I'm absolutely in love with and doing this, which is truly my purpose. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for what he did. So we fast forward a few years. I worked at Urban Decay and I had a few health implications, which I'll probably go into in another episode. We don't want to get too deep on episode number 2, but anyway. And the relationship came to a big, big breakdown. And I found text messages to his friends that would say, I was a sponge, I was a money grabber, I didn't do anything, I stayed home all day, I just went out with my friends. And what he didn't see was, I was home a lot more than he was. He had the very traditional went out to the office job, but it doesn't mean I'm sitting at home doing nothing. And I think that is a very big misconception with our industry, and that, just because you're sitting at home doesn't mean you're not working, like work from home. But this was pre-COVID, so I'm sure attitudes to that have hopefully changed by now. But these really, really stuck with me, and it flipped from I will help you, I will support you, I help you build your business, I will financially support us, to I'm a sponge, I'm a gold digger, get out of here. And ultimately I lost our apartment that we rented together, and all my stuff, all the stuff that was mine in it. I literally picked out everything. It was my home. And I went back to little old Kent where I had no clients. And just before that happened, things were really starting to take off. I had a fully booked bridal season. I was working with celebrities. Literally the day before he did it, I was working with quite a big celebrity over here in the UK. I had to go back home, and trains here are very expensive, and it just wasn't an option for me to commute in from where I was, where I had to move back home to. So I went back home, and I'm forever grateful that I was able to do that, because there are some people who do not have that luxury. And that was ultimately what kept me from being homeless. Went back home, healed, and it was the most perfect place to heal. My parents lived backing onto a forest, so I just went out in the forest every day, and my parents didn't charge me anything. And that was ultimately what kept me from being homeless, was I did have the parents to fall back on. I was such a shell. I think when something like that happens, if anybody has been cheated on who's listening, it's such a break of trust, and it makes you question so many things about your self-worth. So I really, really did need to heal, and it really, truly did feel like I lost everything. But in retrospect, oh my God, what I gained, I needed that to happen. And I always say this to anybody, if anybody right now is listening to this podcast and is having the worst time, and I'm talking like they are so low and your self-worth is so low right now, and you just are at rock bottom, I really know, because I didn't believe anybody when they told me this, but please know that this is going to be your awakening. It is going to be your catalyst. Like as I said, I would do that horrible experience 1,000 times to meet Robbie, who is now my partner and truly my soulmate. I couldn't be better matched with anyone more than Robbie. I actually woke up one day and thought, I cannot let myself do that ever again. I need to financially grow up. And I would talk about my money story on another episode. I really do believe everybody has a money story. My money story from that point on was paycheck to paycheck, not being financially responsible. I had a lot of learning to do, but the biggest learn from that entire thing was I'm never going to let a man or anyone make me feel that way again. And I need to help other women who are in that situation, because my story isn't just my story. From the By Kayleigh platform, I have heard and chatted to other women who have been in also relationships where the man is the main breadwinner. It happens. It's super common here in the UK. And the main need is for them is they want to earn money so they don't have to rely on that person anymore, because you just don't know what will happen. And I think there is only good things that come from being financially able to depend on yourself, from having financial stability, from having financial freedom, financial independence, and financial literacy, which I think women are not taught at all here in the UK anyway. So I remember sitting in bed and being like, I just don't want anybody to be in the position I was in, because if I didn't have my parents, that would lead to women being homeless and in such worse situations than I was in. And I just don't want that to happen. And I thought, little old me, what can I do in this industry that can help that? I can't do anything, can I? And it was around COVID when I started to really, obviously in COVID, we had so much time. We had all the time in the world. And I really started to explore that tiny feeling and that tiny thought that I had gained from that experience. And obviously some time had passed from then. I had done a lot of healing. I had Robbie, but I still was very much in this victim mentality and this very low mindset and low self-worth. But it was truly COVID and listening to podcasts, can you believe it? Specifically the Manifestation Babe podcast, that kind of shook me. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. I was shook into believing in myself. I think we all had realizations in COVID, didn't we? And my big realization was I need to stop thinking that I am a starving artist. I need to stop with all of the things, every single story that I've told you about in this podcast, from my teachers saying that makeup artists and beauty and hairdressers don't make any money, from my ex saying I was a sponge, from other exes who thought no money can be made in makeup. I remember one specific ex saying to me, "You're going to give up law school to do makeup? Are you sure?" And I've heard that a million times, by the way. And that builds up and that builds up and that builds up. And I think it really, truly took COVID for me to throw it all to the wind and be like, actually, I'm waking up. I am taking the pen and I'm rewriting this. I need the change to happen now in me, and I'm the only one responsible for that change. I am not going to meet a client who's going to make me a millionaire. I am not going to win the lottery. I need to be the change, and I need to take the pen. I always tell my mentorship program, take the pen, rewrite it. The story that you think and that society has imprinted on you, you can rewrite that. We can rewrite that. And that was my moment. So I created By Kayleigh. She was very small at the beginning. She was just a little Etsy store. I thought, what is the one thing I can contribute right here, right now that can help makeup artists? And I lent into my law background. And this is what I mean, guys. Every little thing, every failure, because I thought that law degree was a complete waste of time and failure, but it served me so well. I can write a contract that is bloody good. And I thought, let me lean into that. I can sell contracts. I can sell terms and conditions. I can sell forms. I've always been pretty nifty with technology. Let me put that skill out there and help makeup artists. And I created a little Instagram, and it was kind of you guys that led me here, really. You guys would ask me business questions, and I was always on my original Instagram account harping on about, charge your worth and step into that, CEO role. And I just wasn't utilizing it correctly when I was on Kayleigh KMUA. And it was you guys that were asking me the questions and being like, do you do this and do you offer that? That I thought, actually, yes, if you're asking for it, there is a need in the industry for it. So I did it. Every question, I thought there's a need for this. I'm going to fill that need. I wrote down literally everything that I ever wanted when I was a baby makeup artist at MAC, and I created it on the By Kayleigh platform. And my mission has and still is, I don't want anybody to be 2018 me with nowhere to go, with no financial independence, no financial freedom, just feeling so lost. And that's what the platform is for. That the community, the mission, my drive is for that person. And for any woman who just wants to make more money, and we've always been told we can't. For every woman who had a teacher or a boyfriend or a husband or a sister or a parent tell them that they will never make money doing what they love, I'm here to be the proof in the pudding. And I'm going to interview some of those puddings as well to show you that it is possible. And that's the aim of this podcast, is to show you it is bloody possible. If you want to be a millionaire makeup artist, I'm going to show you. I'm not a millionaire yet, guys, by the way. Just in case I'm painting this picture that I live in a mansion. I live in a teeny tiny flat in central London, and I'm yet to hit those big figures, but it's coming. I've done a lot of investing into my business, and I'm so confident that we're going to be starting to see the results of that. And yeah, you guys will be the first to know when I hit 1 million, I promise. I can't guarantee it'll be in the next couple of years, but it's going to happen, and I'm going to bloody shout about it, because I mean, there are makeup artists out there who have earned 1 million already, 100%. I've met them, I've talked to them, I've seen them. Mario is a massive example of one. It's possible, and it has to start with you believing it's possible. I know that's bloody cliche, but it does. It starts with you, and it starts with you taking the pen and rewriting it. So that is my story, the history of Kayleigh KMUA and By Kayleigh. Now, to this day, I still do makeup. I work mainly in commercial, celebrity, and editorial bridal. I love it. I'm very privileged to be in the position now where I can just be quite picky and choosy with who I work with and types of jobs that I take. I only tend to take kind of higher ticket, high-end clients now, which is amazing. I've always been very, very naturally good at business. As I said, my first business was, I was like 6 years old, and I created perfume with all the flowers in my mum's garden. I would sell them at school and then get really told off for it. So I've always been an entrepreneur, and I feel like the two worlds needed to collide at some point. I was repressing both, and now they're both here, they're both out, and they're both proud. So this is episode 2. I hope it wasn't boring. I mean, I think this was a story I think a lot of you guys can relate to. I've heard many stories similar to mine. And if you do have a story similar to mine, please do follow me on Instagram. I'm sure most of you are already. And tell me about it in the DMs. I love chatting in the DMs and getting to know the community. So please do come and tell me if you resonated with anything that I spoke about on this story. Next, coming up on a podcast by Kayleigh, I'm going to be interviewing some amazing makeup artists. And not only makeup artists, but general women like bosses, just absolute bosses in their field that I think we can pull inspiration from and pull knowledge from their stories. I don't just want to limit this podcast to makeup artists. I want to incorporate hairstylists, beauticians, and women who are just killing it everywhere, because I want them to show you that it is possible for you as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, and let me know if you made it to the end, and I will see you back here next week for episode 3. You have been listening to a podcast by Kayleigh. Thank you so much for tuning in today and being on this mission with me to self-improvement and taking steps towards financial empowerment. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to follow me on the gram at By Kayleigh Designs, where I post pretty much daily. I would also love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and energy, so please do leave me a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you are listening today. In the meantime, I want you to go forward, believe in yourselves, and be the change you want to see. Bye, guys.
Can you stop dissing me on the podcast, please?